It's Clive Rocksinger here. People may not be interested in what I'm doing, but I'm kind of not really doing it for other people. I'm doing it to advance my own designs, and so this is kind of like when I put it up on the net, it inspires me to do better, and it's a self-motivator. So this is a tool I use for myself. And if I'd be very surprised if nobody's interested in this, because I wanted to do this my whole life. And there's not a lot of people that are real good with 3D printers in Australia. We really, when I say we've only been introduced, I've only been introduced to it out here in the country, but our electronic shop probably would be in step with most shops. So we've kind of only, well, I've only been introduced to 3D printers in the last 12 months. That's how long they've been carrying them. They did have them a little bit before that, but they didn't have the ones that were any good to me, and when they finally did come down to the price that I wanted, I decided to get a professional one. But this is about designing things, and even the guys in America mainly make toys. They don't really make designs. This is a piece of scientific equipment, and it's getting a little bit complicated. Now this is the device now, and this is all coming together now. I've now got the roller bearings in there. I've got a new design for the end part here, where that'll actually be a grub screw in that piece in the end there. And what that does is it allows movement in the shaft. It allows movement in the shaft so that they can move up and down, but when it changes in length it's not held. Even though that's got the central part there, you can see that's the bending point where the end of that the sleeve is, but it's allowed to move inside of that, and it doesn't strengthen it, because that adds strength to it and then it gives you the bad readings. This is for putting, I wanted an adjustable weight application for PLA, because it only takes micrograms in pressure. Like PLA is like when you've got like regular hex infill. It's very, very light, and you get any length, anything even remotely like that, you can have a heck of a lot of give, and you don't have to put much weight on it. So this thing has been designed to have an adjustable, it's actually a balance, that's actually balanced. It's amazing, there's quite a bit of weight on that, and that's actually balanced. But the PLA is no good because it's got too much flex in it. So I'm encountering a few. I might have to make a rail up like on racing car chassis, where it's got the cross-hatched V type webbing in it, and I'm going to have to test it on this thing to test it to see how for rigidity. And I think I'm pretty sure I can get some really good material, some filament that's got some really advanced stuff. I think I call it TPU. Mine will do nylon and everything, so I can get some stronger material to make it out of, but that's obviously got too much flex in it for a piece of experimental equipment. What I did with that was I actually got readings off the last one. It wasn't adjustable, but I tested it, and I had 312 grams on this end, and it turned out that it was per plate, it was 28 grams per plate, which is one of them, and it was 8.2 grams at this end. So this is it's a reducer, so that you get a very, very light pressure on here, and that can be adjusted there, and it can also be counterbalanced so that it equalises the actual weight on this end from the machine itself. So it's quite fancy. This is a bit butchered because I widened the journal on the second one, and that was the narrow one that I made on the previous one, so I just had to butcher this to get it to work. But yeah, it works, and then now going on to the second level design, which is this one here, and this has now got a longer, as you can see here, that part's longer. This wasn't long enough. I wanted that longer. It worked, but it didn't have enough weight to actually exert a bit of pressure on here, so I want to be able to bring that down to about here and put a fair bit of weight on it. Yeah, and I put in a removable base because it was quite time consuming to make that whole pillar up. So I made it with a removable base, so it's got a removable base now. I put a blade end on it instead of the pointy end, so that it can sit on the shaft. And yeah, so far it's going real good, but oh boy, it's really getting complicated now. I needed a gauge, and the dial gauge, unfortunately, I tested it, and when you put pressure on a dial gauge, it changes in pressure when you put more, the more you push it down, the more pressure it creates, which is no good. So I'm making a dial up out of little nylon, when I say nylon, this is actually a linen, little linen transmission. And what it'll do is as you push down that, it'll push a little lever, and it'll go through this transmission, and these ones are going to have a small and a big one, and so that you can cascade them, and it'll be connected by linen here, and it'll be a little gearbox, so it'll be like 20 to 1, and so you just press down there once there, and it'll actually move a gauge almost all the way around, and it won't wane very much because of the linen, and then it'll actually have a balance hanging down from it that I can actually adjust and calibrate it and get it dead exact. And then once I've got a dead exact constant weight, I can then compensate for it. And this is another idea for the base that I actually was successful with, but I can't find this one, and I'm going to make the base up out of that. I'm just going to use more of these. This will be a much bigger base. It needs quite a bit of weight to hold this thing down, and so to start with I'll use that. At a later date I'm going to bolt all this down. But yeah, boy gee, it's a lot of work gone into this so far. This is a strength test, but you can test all sorts of things with it. You can also test this. You can test it this way as well. So it's quite nifty. Then you test it at different lengths. When you when you're doing engineering, they tested it. Wait, move, go back. They tested at different parts of it, and get different tensions, and that's the whole idea. And so you can test it on here, and you can test it down there. That's the whole idea of the movable bits. So, yeah, so far so good. It's a bit of a butchery at the moment, but I've actually got this working. It's actually balanced. Look at that. Unbelievable. Looks like that. Looks what that reminds me of. There's a bird or something that goes like that. I think, I don't know, it was on Mad or something. The bird. Anyway, Clive Roxinger over and out.